The storm raged across the rusty plains of Helios 9, sending sheets of crimson dust slamming against the reinforced windows of Marcus Calloway's outpost home. 3 years since his discharge from the Earth Alliance forces, and still, the howling winds reminded him of artillery fire, memories he'd crossed half the galaxy to escape. Marcus checked his oxygen mask and supply pack one last time before heading out. Storm or not, he needed supplies, and Outpost Theta was already holding a shipment for him. He sealed his environment suit and stepped out into the maelstrom, the specialized rover waiting in its protective bay. Weather override authorized, he commanded, and the vehicle systems hummed to life. Route to Outpost Theta minimal exposure protocols. The journey took twice as long as usual, the storm reducing visibility to mere meters. When he finally arrived, the outpost trading hub was nearly deserted. Calloway, Jansen, the supply manager, called out. Didn't expect anyone mad enough to travel in this nightmare. Necessity doesn't care about the weather, Marcus replied, his voice gruff from disuse. Speaking with others had become a rare occurrence these days. After loading his supplies, Marcus was about to depart when emergency comms crackled to life throughout the outpost. Transport vessel down in Sector 7, announced the automated alert. No emergency response available during storm conditions. Jansen shook his head. Poor bastards, nothing we can do until this passes. Marcus frowned. Sector 7 was only 2 kilometers from his route home. Send me the coordinates. You can't be serious, Calloway. Even with your fancy military-grade rover, it's suicide in these conditions. I've survived worse, Marcus said simply, already heading for the door. The transport vessel had broken apart upon impact, debris scattered across a half-kilometer radius. Marcus's scanner indicated that life support systems had failed hours ago, no survivors likely. Still, he methodically searched the wreckage, more out of military habit than hope. In what remained of the cargo hold, his light caught a flicker of movement. Reflexively, his hand moved to his sidearm before he forced it back down. The movement came again, small, deliberate, hiding. Hello, he called out, switching his comm to broadcast on all frequencies. I'm here to help. A small figure darted between cargo containers. Marcus caught a glimpse of iridescent scales and large, luminous eyes. A Viridian child, one of the reclusive species known for their bioengineering prowess and deep distrust of humans following territorial disputes on the outer colonies. It's okay, he said softly, crouching down to appear less threatening. The storm is dangerous, you need shelter. The child, a female, he guessed from the violet hue of her scales, peered at him with intelligent eyes that held equal measures of fear and calculation. She couldn't be more than 8 or 9 in human years. Varith Nakalim, she whispered, voice trembling. Marcus recognized fragments of the Viridian language from his military briefings. I don't understand, he admitted, but I want to help you. He extended his hand slowly, palm up, a universal gesture of peace. For long moments the child remained frozen. Then, as a particularly violent gust rocked the wreckage around them, she darted forward and grabbed his fingers with her small, 6-digited hand. Outside, he wrapped her in his emergency thermal blanket before placing her in the rover. My home is safe, he said clearly, hopping his tone conveyed what his words couldn't. As they drove through the storm, Marcus glanced at his unexpected passenger. She sat perfectly still, watching him with unblinking eyes. Taking in a Viridian child, especially with tensions between their species still simmering, was asking for trouble. The Alliance authorities would demand he turn her over. The Viridians might accuse him of kidnapping. Yet as the child hesitantly huddled closer to the rover's heater, Marcus knew he couldn't have left her behind. Whatever complications came next, they'd face them tomorrow. Tonight, all that mattered was keeping her safe. 3 months had passed since Marcus brought the Viridian child home. He'd named her Talia after she pointed repeatedly to herself and said something that sounded similar. The first weeks had been challenging, her diet required specific nutrients that Marcus had to synthesize, and communication consisted mainly of gestures and drawings. But children, it seemed, were adaptable across species. Talia proved remarkably intelligent, quickly grasping simple English phrases while teaching Marcus bits of her own language. His military translator device helped, though it struggled with the nuanced tonal aspects of Viridian speech. Kemoth, Talia said one morning, pointing to the sunrise painting Helios 9's sky in brilliant oranges and purples. Beautiful, Marcus agreed, kneeling beside her. The sunrise is beautiful. Beautiful, she repeated carefully, her mouth working around the unfamiliar sounds. Then she smiled, a gesture he'd learned was not natural to Viridians but one she'd adopted from him. Their quiet existence changed when Marcus took Talia with him to Outpost Theta for supplies. He'd modified a hood to conceal her distinctive features, but her unusual gait and six-fingered hands drew attention. "What have you got there, Calloway?" Jansen asked, eyes narrowing suspiciously. "My niece," Marcus lied smoothly. "Sister's kid from the inner colonies. Genetic modification is popular there." Jansen didn't appear convinced but nodded anyway. "Funny timing. There's a Viridian been making rounds through the frontier posts, female, looking for something or someone." Marcus felt his pulse quicken. Diplomatic mission. "Doesn't seem like it. Travels alone, very determined, very intimidating from what I hear." That night, Marcus watched Talia sleeping peacefully in the nest of blankets she'd arranged in perfect geometric patterns, a Viridian cultural habit he'd learned. Someone was looking for her, possibly her mother or guardian. The right thing would be to help reunite them. Yet the thought of losing Talia created an unexpected ache in his chest. In just 3 months, she'd filled a void in his solitary existence he hadn't even recognized was there. Marcus, Talia called one evening, her pronunciation improving daily. Rishi Venartal. His translator interpreted, "When will we see the stars again?" The dust storms had finally cleared, revealing Helios 9's spectacular night sky. Marcus lifted her onto his shoulders and carried her outside. "Nivatel Perium," she whispered in awe, pointing toward a distant blue-tinted star. "Home?" Marcus asked, recognizing the Viridian word for origin. She nodded solemnly, then rested her small hand against his cheek. "Nivatel Nova," she said firmly. The translator offered, "Home is now here." Marcus swallowed past the sudden tightness in his throat. "Yes," he agreed, "home is here." 2 days later, they were harvesting the hardy vegetables from Marcus's greenhouse when his perimeter alert sounded. Someone had breached the outer sensor ring, someone moving with expert precision to avoid the main surveillance nodes. "Talia inside," he ordered, reaching for the blaster he kept holstered at his back. She hesitated, her head tilting in that characteristic Viridian manner that indicated she was listening to something beyond human hearing range. Suddenly, her eyes widened, and she darted toward the approaching ridgeline, ignoring Marcus's calls. A tall figure crested the rise, silhouetted against the afternoon sun. Feminine but powerful, adorned with the distinctive armor of Viridian warriors. As she removed her helmet, Marcus caught his breath. Her scaled skin shimmered with the same violet hue as Talia's, but with deeper, more complex patterns. Her eyes large, luminous, and utterly focused, fixed on the child running toward her. "Narin Vela," Talia cried out joyfully, leaping into the woman's arms. Marcus stood frozen, his weapon half-raised, watching the reunion. When the Viridian woman looked up from embracing Talia, her gaze locked with his. There was no gratitude in those alien eyes, only fierce suspicion and a silent promise of reckoning. "You will return my daughter now." The Viridian woman's command came through her translator in clipped, formal English. She stood at the threshold of Marcus's home, refusing to enter despite Talia's enthusiastic tugging at her hand. "I never intended to keep her from her family," Marcus replied evenly. "I found her alone in crashed wreckage during a storm." "Enavara," Talia interjected, speaking rapidly in her native tongue. The woman whom Talia had called Narin listened intently, her expression shifting subtly. She finally addressed Marcus again. "My daughter says you protected her, that you cared for her needs." "Of course I did, she's a child." Narin's eyes narrowed. Humans do not typically extend such consideration to Viridian children. "I'm not typical," Marcus said simply. A tense silence stretched between them until Talia broke it by pulling insistently on Narin's armor, gesturing at the dwelling with excited chatter. "She wants to show you her home," Marcus translated, the word causing Narin to stiffen. "This is not her home," she stated flatly. "It has been for 3 months. You're welcome to come inside and see how she's lived." Reluctantly, Narin followed her daughter inside, her tall frame almost brushing the ceiling. Her eyes catalogued everything: exits, potential weapons, the modifications Marcus had made for Talia's comfort. Her gaze lingered on the wall where Talia's drawings chronicled her time with Marcus, hunting for mineral specimens, stargazing, learning to cook. "The transport was attacked," Narin finally said, her voice tight. "I tracked the raiders across 3 systems, but their trail went cold. I believe Talia lost until rumors reached me of a human harboring a Viridian child." "Who attacked you?" Marcus asked. "Resource pirates. They killed our escorts. I placed Talia in an escape pod during the firefight, but it was damaged. The tracking beacon failed." Her voice remained steady, but Marcus recognized the controlled trauma beneath. He'd heard it in his own voice often enough. "You've been searching all this time." "I would search until my final breath," she replied simply. That night, Marcus prepared a meal that accommodated both human and Veridian nutritional needs, a skill he'd perfected over the past months. Talia chattered excitedly throughout dinner, switching between languages, clearly delighted to have both adults at her table. She has learned much of your language, Naren observed, and you have learned some of ours. Marcus nodded. She's an excellent teacher. Later, after Talia had fallen asleep, Naren studied Marcus openly. You were a warrior, she said, not a question. Once Earth Alliance Special Forces. Yet now you live alone on the frontiers. Some wars don't end when you leave the battlefield, he replied quietly. Something flickered in her expression, recognition perhaps. You will return with us to our settlement tomorrow, she declared. Excuse me. Talia has formed an attachment. Severing it completely would be harmful to her development. You will accompany us until she adjusts to being without you. Marcus recognized the concession for what it was, not quite trust, but an acknowledgement of his place in Talia's life. And if I refuse? Naren's lip curled slightly, revealing the edge of a sharp canine. That would be unwise. He smiled despite himself. I'll pack my things. The Veridian settlement sprawled across a sheltered valley 2 days' journey from Marcus's outpost. Unlike the utilitarian human colonies, these structures melded seamlessly with the landscape, living architecture that seemed to grow from the very rock. Marcus felt the stares of the settlement's inhabitants as Naren led him through winding pathways. Children halted their play to watch the human stranger. Warriors tracked his movements with barely concealed hostility. Your presence is unprecedented, Naren explained later as they shared the evening meal in her dwelling. No human has been welcomed here. I'm not sure welcomed is the right word, Marcus observed dryly. The corner of Naren's mouth twitched, the closest thing to a smile he'd seen from her. Perhaps tolerated is more accurate. Over the following weeks, Marcus integrated into Talia's routine. Each day, he expected Naren to dismiss him, to declare Talia sufficiently readjusted, but the dismissal never came. Instead, an unexpected rhythm developed between them. During the day, Naren performed her duties as Verikai protector of the settlement. Each evening, the three of them would share meals, after which Marcus would help Talia with her studies before she slept. Then in the quiet hours, he and Naren would talk. At first, their conversations were solely about Talia. Gradually, they expanded to encompass their respective cultures, philosophies, experiences of war. Your military records list you as decorated for valor, Naren mentioned one night. Yet you speak of your service with regret. Marcus raised an eyebrow. You accessed my records. I research potential threats thoroughly. Am I still a potential threat? Her gaze, direct and unblinking, held his. You are still undefined. One evening, returning from a patrol, Naren found Marcus teaching Talia a human game involving catching and throwing. She watched silently, studying the gentle precision with which he guided her daughter's movements, the genuine pleasure he took in Talia's accomplishments. You have no offspring of your own, she stated as they walked back toward her dwelling. No, Marcus replied, never found the right time or person. Yet you assumed responsibility for a child not of your species or bloodline. She needed help, it wasn't complicated. Naren stopped walking. But it was, you risked censure from your own kind, potential conflict with mine, these are not simple choices. When her fingers brushed his arm, the first voluntary contact she had initiated, Marcus felt an electric awareness that had nothing to do with species differences. That night, a message arrived from the Earth Alliance outpost. Rumors of Marcus harboring a Veridian had reached official channels. They demanded his return for questioning. You should go, Naren said, her voice carefully neutral. Resolve the matter officially. And if I don't want to leave, Marcus asked, watching her closely. Why would you stay? Her question held genuine confusion and something else beneath it. Marcus stepped closer. I think you know why. When his hand rose to trace the intricate scale patterns along her cheek, she went perfectly still. Then, with deliberate intent, she leaned into his touch. The summit between Earth Alliance representatives and the Veridian High Council convened in neutral territory, an orbital station circling Helios 9. Marcus and Naren stood side by side before both delegations, an unprecedented sight that caused murmurs from both sides. This relationship you claim is irregular, stated the Alliance diplomat, carefully avoiding the word impossible. As is the peace you claim to seek, Naren countered. As Verikai, her voice carried the authority of her people. Yet here we are discussing rather than fighting. Marcus stepped forward. For decades, humans and Veridians have maintained separation based on assumptions about incompatibility. We're living proof those assumptions are flawed. 3 months had passed since that first tentative touch between them. 3 months of discovering that despite physiological differences, connection was not only possible but profound. What began as mutual respect had deepened into something neither had anticipated, something both of their societies had deemed impossible. The child complicates matters, noted a Viridian elder. Mixed guardianship has no precedent. Talia thrives with both of us, Naren said firmly. Her development exceeds all expected parameters. She bridges our worlds, Marcus added, as we hope others might someday do. The negotiations extended for days, with Marcus and Naren returning each evening to the small quarters they shared with Talia. On the final night, as their daughter slept peacefully, they stood watching the slow rotation of the stars. They will not accept us, Naren said quietly, not fully, not yet. They don't need to, Marcus replied, drawing her close. We're not asking permission to exist, we're showing them what's possible. The compromise, when it finally came, was imperfect. They would establish residence in a new settlement, a place between colonies where others like them might someday find refuge, not fully accepted by either world but no longer rejected by both. On the day they departed the station, Talia ran ahead to their ship, excited for the next adventure. Marcus paused, looking back at the representatives of both species watching their departure with expressions ranging from curiosity to disapproval. They'll follow eventually, Naren said, reading his thoughts as she'd learned to do. Change begins with those willing to live in the uncomfortable spaces between worlds. Marcus smiled, taking her hand. Its shape was different from his own, stronger in some ways, more delicate in others, like their relationship, like the life they were building. Ready? He asked. Naren's eyes, once so unreadable to him, now conveyed all he needed to know. Neva tell Nova, she said simply, home is now here. As their ship lifted away from the station, they left behind more than two societies struggling to understand their choice. They carried with them the beginning of a new possibility, a future where us and them might someday fade into simply we. Talia called them to the viewport, pointing excitedly at the stars stretching before them. Together, the family that fate had assembled against all odds stepped into the space between worlds, the frontier where love had already proven stronger than the boundaries of species or society. Their path would not be easy, but as Marcus looked at Naren and Talia, his unexpected family, he knew with absolute certainty that it was right.